The ultimate entrepreneurial experience is to give away your heart and to take a chance. That's what young people today, they're so non-entrepreneurial if they're unwilling to fall in love. Forget all the cool stuff that you and I have been able to do professionally. Fall in love, that's entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is taking a big risk in looking for major rewards, for explosive returns. I'm not going to tell you how to denominate those returns. It's faith in resources that you don't already have in hand. These are the characteristics of the entrepreneur. When I was writing a textbook on entrepreneurship, I was looking at that and I'm saying, it's a big mistake to talk about this in terms of money. We should be talking about this in terms of love, because that's the currency of life. And when a whole generation of young people are miserable because they're comfortable putting millions of people's dollars at risk to start a company, but they're unwilling to go bankrupt in their relationships, that's the problem. We have people who are too non-entrepreneurial, which is one of the reasons that we have too few people who are in love today, as far as I'm concerned.
Need motivation?
Watch a top 10 with Believe Nation.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because I need them for me, because I want to wake up every day and watch a video that puts me in a mindset to believe in myself more and go off and accomplish amazing things and attack the day. And I hope that this video does that for you as well. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Arthur Brooks, and my take on his top 10 rules of success. Enjoy. Rule number 2 is practice discernment.
We think that the world is going to tell us what we want through these experiences. That doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. You know, my students will say, you know, I thought when I went to college, I would figure out what my passion is. And I got out of college and I still didn't have it. So I went to business school and I thought that I would find it there. And then I went to McKinsey, or, you know, I went to, you know, the Boston Consulting Group or Goldman Sachs, and I thought I would find it there. And I, you know, I'm 31 years old, still waiting for my passion. But we do sort of the same thing too. I like this thing, and what the next thing that should be will present itself to me. But that's actually not the way it works. We need to be highly purposive about our discernment. And discernment is an ancient tradition. You know, discernment, sunesis for the ancient Greeks, panna for the Buddhists in Pali or Sanskrit. And you know, there's this Ignatian spiritual discernment for Catholics. And so every spiritual tradition has discernment, and it requires work. You know, when I was thinking about this, when I stepped down as the president of this think tank, I went for a walk. I walked the Camino de Santiago. I walked and walked and walked and asked for help and thought about this and what am I supposed to do next? And I've done it since then too. And I'm going to do it regularly because I need to this constant process of discernment, which it exposes me to the most boring thing ever, which is the exposure therapy to something that's not exciting, that is actually excruciatingly boring and painful, and during which time I can actually contemplate what the next thing probably should be. But we need to get out of our routine and do the work of this.
Rule number 3 is acknowledge your emotions.
Why is it important for us to be more aware of our negative feelings and emotions? And why are those negative feelings and emotions actually not a bad thing?
Yeah. So to begin with, you die without them. You die without the bad feelings, because your bad feelings are alarms that something's going on that you got to pay attention to, but they're maladapted in modern life. You know, we have the same physiological stress reaction to being chased by a tiger and getting a really bad tweet. You know, I mean, that's not normal that we have the same, but, you know, because we're very kind of rudimentary creatures and we're not adapted to the modern environment very well. So that means that we don't need to regret our bad feelings, our bad emotion, or our negative emotions. What we need to do is to understand them, to manage them, so we can learn and grow from them. That's the goal. The goal is not to eradicate them because we don't want to die and we actually need them, but we got to make sure that we have enough knowledge so that when they're maladapted or they're becoming a source of rumination and even mental illness, that we have the knowledge, the self-knowledge and practice and techniques that we can actually treat ourselves a little bit without feeling so helpless all the time, or God forbid, turning to substances, which so many people do to numb themselves. So that's really why emotional self-regulation is so critically important.
Rule number 4 is be truthful to yourself.
You said you rediscovered yourself.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Like, you need a sense of identity? Is that a core part of this? Like, when you say you rediscovered, is it a self-narrative?
It's you know who you deeply are as a person. You're acquainted with yourself. You're acquainted with your true self. And just as with people who are around you, you can create an identity that's actually not authentic. You can create an identity to yourself that's not authentic. You can be giving yourself a self-narrative that's not true to actually who you are as a person.
What does it mean, who you are? What you're good at, what you love?
it generally speaking has to do with being in the zone of what you actually love to do and what you appreciate most in your life, when you're in line with your own values, when you're living according to your own values. So Jung would have put it this way. Carl Jung, his definition of his understanding of happiness was that you need to understand your own values, what you value, what you think is proper and correct and moral. And if you know what that is and can articulate it and live according to that, you will be happy. If you,
Do you agree with that?
I think it's actually, there's a lot of truth to that, because you have to figure out what you think, what your model of the world actually is, what you think truth is, and then living in accord with your own values, with your own integrity is really critically important, because when people live outside that groove, they're never in equilibrium. They're just never. The problem is that they're not comfortable. They're not comfortable in their own skin. And I've noticed this, I was working, it was good being the president of a think tank. I was lucky to be president of a think tank. I believed in the work, but it wasn't who I was. And so I was kind of out of my groove for 10 and a half years. And when I went back to writing and speaking and teaching and doing creative work, I said, it's
Is that
weird.
always who you were, or was that because you switched into crystal?
No, it's always who I was. Always a creative. As a kid, I was painting and writing and composing music, and I just always wanted to be. Creativity is the most important thing in my life, or curiosity and creativity are the most important thing that I can. Not the most important thing in my life. The most important thing that I can do, and when I'm actually happiest, and when I was managing a large workforce, managing a lot of creatives to their best selves. They had certainly creative moments to it, to be sure, but it wasn't comfortable to me. And when my second curve, which was much more crystallized intelligence, is also a lot more creative. So I was kind of out of equilibrium for a long time during that period as well, which compounds the problem of my declining fluid intelligence. Also not being in a creative role, but it's just so much better. I teach at a great university, which I love. I write for a magazine every week about things that I'm really interested in. I get to talk to you about it. Beats working.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there. Rule number 5 is tap into your spirituality.
What's the best guidance for finding spirituality? Now, this is a question that people ask all the time, and it's actually not the kind of question that typically you find people who are, 12 or 13 years old asking. This is like kind of a 42 or 43-year-old person's question, or even older than that. It's funny because we leave behind our childish things, and we realize that things that perhaps earlier in adulthood we thought were childish aren't. And we have these hungers, and we don't know actually where to turn. So the answer to this is basically, it really comes from something that I learned from the Dalai Lama, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the leader of Tibetan Buddhism. I'm not a Buddhist, I'm a Christian. But it's very wise what he talked about. Think about the search for spiritual truths in 3 parts. Number 1, do the work to figure out what you believe ethically about life. What are your beliefs? What are your beliefs about what it means to be a good person? Well, this is important because you actually can't find your spiritual self when you're living out of sync with your moral self. So figure out what that is. Write it down. Make a list of your actual beliefs about what a good person does, and then ask yourself, am I living according to that? Do the work on actually doing that self-examination. That's number 1. Number 2, start a meditative practice. I don't mean meditate necessarily. As a Christian, I pray every day. That's a meditative practice. Maybe you're somebody who likes to walk in nature before dawn for an hour without devices. That's your meditative practice. Maybe it is meditation, but you need something that's contemplative in your life. What is it? Start doing it. Start easy, 5 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day. You don't have to do 3 hours a day. Do something that focuses you in a contemplative way. And last but not least, you need to read. You need to read more. There's so much great stuff out there that we're just passing up by scrolling our Instagram feeds, by wasting our time, by frittering away our attention. Take 15 minutes a day. And by the way, you're going to get so stuck on this that 15 minutes is not going to be enough after a while. Let's start with 15 minutes a day and have a stack of things you've always wanted to read about the deeper verities of life. What are the truths you've always wanted to know about? What are the books that you've always wanted to read? Maybe it's a novel that really has deep moral truths, like the Brothers Karamazov of Fyodor Dostoevsky. Maybe it's The Miracle of Mindfulness by Thich Nhat Hanh. Maybe it's the Bible. But just read 15 minutes a day of something like this. If you do those three things, examine your beliefs and write them down, start a contemplative practice, and read the books that you know are going to bring you deeper, your life is going to start changing, and you're not going to have to look anymore because it's going to start to appear before you, your spiritual truths, the life that you want.
Rule number 6 is overcome your addictions.
I'm finally going to drink so much I don't need to drink anymore. Nobody has ever said those words. It's like, but there's an actually added layer of tyranny to this, which is that, when you were in the worst parts of alcohol abuse, nobody said, "Hey, Rich, good job. That's a lot of alcohol. Mm-hmm. I'm really impressed." But if you're
the social reward system is inverse.
But if you're a hopeless success addict,
yeah,
and you work the 14th hour instead of the first hour with your children, you get patted on the back. Are you kidding me? Because you're a hard worker and you're successful and they congratulate you. They admire you. Nobody admires somebody for doing 5 grams of cocaine on a Saturday night. But people,
I know a few people who might.
You're gifted.
Yeah.
But this is the key. But it presses the same levers. Hit the lever, get the cookie, which is how dopamine works. I mean, we understand this better and better. The anticipation of the reward is so powerful in creating the craving, whether it's a behavioral or a chemical addiction. It all works the same way. And by the way, you notice that people who are really successful, who are success addicts, they tend to abuse alcohol more than people who are not. Mm-hmm. The people in the high socioeconomic status, people who work really, really long hours, according to the OECD, data across virtually every country, especially for men, they tend toward alcoholism. They tend toward drug abuse.
Maintaining that level of intensity, you need some kind of escape valve.
Yeah, and there's also cross addiction. Dopamine is dopamine, and there's comorbidities between dopamine. It's one of the reasons that if you go to the doctor and if you have abused alcohol, the first thing and you say I can't sleep, the doctor should not prescribe you Ambien because you could get addicted to Ambien much more easily than somebody who's never engraved these dopaminergic pathways into the brain, like Rich loves Susie on a tree that you're mortified to see for the rest of your life, even though the tree continued to grow.
Rule number 7 is start journaling.
How can we learn from traumatic experiences through journaling?
So the problem with a lot of traumatic experiences for people is that they're a ghost in the brain. They're unsupervised. The memories, the sensations, they're purely limbic. And they're uncomfortable, so the natural tendency is to want to make them go away. Now, some people make them go away by numbing them with drugs and alcohol, or other kinds of behaviors that are compulsive and addictive and not good. Other ways to do that are to kind of accept them, but never really to analyze them very much at all. To kind of identifying oneself as a victim, to get kind of the victim identity. This is a very unhealthy thing to do that leads to a lot of misery. And by the way, when you are a victim, you tend to make a lot of misery around you. That's when you go into you get radical politics and you spend too much time on social media. It's like, don't do that. Then you're going to spread your misery around. The way to deal with this, and sometimes it's very important to have the help of a therapist to do this, is to say, I want to understand these feelings that I'm actually having. It doesn't mean you have to recreate the feelings. No, there are plenty there, but to look at these things from a certain remove. To say, this thing is really, really on my mind. To name the emotion that you're actually feeling. It's like, I'm feeling residual fear every time this thing comes up. I'm feeling real sadness about something that happened to me. And to say, not to think about the event, but to think about the sadness itself. To really think about the fear itself, to think about how it makes you feel in the pit of your stomach, that it raises your blood pressure and your cortisol and your stress markers, that it's doing all this stuff, and really notice that. You don't need to go over the source of your fear because you've gone over that 1 billion times, but to go over the sensation itself. Then actually you're understanding that feeling in your executive centers, and that's your CEO being alerted that your leader needs to be a leader.
Rule number 8 is be disciplined.
How can I improve my career in dealing with stress? This is a hard one. I feel stressed too. And part of the reason I feel stressed is because I'm kind of an anxious person. If you take the PANAS profile, which everybody who's read the new book has taken the PANAS profile, I'm a super mad scientist. Very high positive affect, 90th percentile in the population. Very high negative affect, 85th percentile. And what the reason for that very high negative affect, or the way that it presents itself, is I'm a very anxious guy, is the way that that works out. Now, I don't do anything to help myself very often because I'm always looking for a new adventure. It's like, put me in, coach. Let's do something new and hard and crazy and scary. And I'm kind of abetting the problem, right? So what do I personally do under the circumstances? Now, I could do what the most obvious thing to do would be, which would be to retire. Go live on a farm. I guess that's what they say about dogs when they're taking them to the pound. It's like, yeah, he's living upstate on a farm. We never said that to our kids, by the way. But the obvious thing would be to step back, but I'm not going to step back. I'm not going to do it. So here's how I do it. I live a life of discipline. I live a life of discipline where I'm in touch with the parts of my life that actually do lower my negative affect, that do lower my anxiety. I wake up every morning at 4:45. From 5 to 6, I work out, resistance training. I lift weights. I don't do it because I'm vain. Look, I got a face for radio. I'm not doing it because I'm trying to look good. I'm trying to lower my negative affect, and high physical fitness is one of the best ways to do that. That's number 2. That's for an hour. Then I take a shower. I wake up my wife and we go to mass. I'm a Catholic. I go to church every day. Super important to me because then I've got body and soul, and then I'm ready to face the day. Look, I've tried to not do these things. I've tried to say, well, hey, maybe I skip mass. It's not the same. I skip my exercise. I feel crummy. If I want to mitigate my own anxiety about my work, it's about my work, friends. I have to do those 2 things. I got to take care of my body and I got to take care of my soul. And then I'm in the best shape that I can possibly be.
Rule number 9 is practice gratitude.
Talk to us about why gratitude is so important and how we can use gratitude to substitute a lot of our negative emotions.
Yeah, gratitude is a substitute emotion that actually substitutes for a natural evolved tendency to see the negative. Now, a lot of people who are watching this, they're like, I'm just such a negative person. I feel I go through the whole, through the whole day and I only see the negative. You, me, and everybody, because evolution gives you the negativity bias. That's why you're alive. If you went through life whistling down the street, only seeing the nice things, you'd be eaten by a tiger so fast, right? I mean, your ancestors would not have made it past the Pleistocene. Trust me. The negativity bias means that you see somebody sweetly smiling at you, nice, but somebody frowning at you, pay attention because that's a threat. You pay attention to threats because it's urgent that you do so, and that leads you to a negativity bias. Now, in modern life, that's maladapted because we have a lot more to be grateful for than resentful about or fearful about. And that means we need to calibrate our emotions consciously. Knowledge is power on this. And so basically, you can choose the emotion of gratitude when you feel resentment. Resentment is the natural emotion, but gratitude is the chosen emotion. How? By saying to yourself, I'm feeling a lot of resentment right now, but the truth of the matter is I have a ton to feel happy about. I mean, it's so easy for me to do this. It's so easy for me to be like, yeah, my book is not selling as much as I like. I got a book with Oprah Winfrey. I should be grateful. It's so easy for me to forget it. I'm the professor of this stuff and I forget. And so the way that you do that is doing it on purpose and being really, really conscious of it. Is basic realism that counterposes against your natural evolutionary tendency. Think about it that way.
And rule number 10, the last one before some very special bonus clips, is chase happiness.
How do you define happiness?
Yeah,
there's so many different ideas around how to think about this.
Yeah, so saying happiness gets people's attention because they know they want it, but then when they think about it, they don't know what it is. And so I ask my students on the first day of class, and look, it's a hard class to get into. There's a lot of competition to get into the class. So I say, look, you're in this class, you bid your points, because this is sort of a point system for getting electives at the Harvard Business School. It's a market. And I say, so you must know what it is, right? What is it? And they'll go around and say, it's the feeling I get when I remember. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Wrong. Happiness is not a feeling any more than the smell of the turkey is your Thanksgiving dinner. That's evidence of your Thanksgiving dinner. Your feeling is evidence of it. If we look at the happiest people and the unhappiest people, the happiest people have in common 3 macronutrients. Like you and I are interested in this stuff. If I say, what is the Thanksgiving dinner? You're going to say, because you're a guy who does this stuff, it's protein, carbohydrates, and fat. That's what your Thanksgiving dinner, literally your Thanksgiving dinner is proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. You making your macros or not if you're going to be healthy. happiness has 3 macronutrients: enjoyment, satisfaction, and purpose, which you need in balance and abundance. And if you don't have all those 3, you're not going to be a happy person. So when I talk to somebody who says, and when you're a happiness specialist, people talk to you like you're a psychiatrist. And so I'll talk to, very powerful people say, frankly, I'm just not happy. I will look at their macronutrient profile in the same way that if you said, my digestion's all goofed up. Well, probably you're not getting the right macros.
Yeah.
And ordinarily what I'll find with strivers is that they're very high in stoic work ethic to get a whole lot of long-term meaning, and they're very low in enjoyment. They're very low in enjoyment, what I find. If I'm talking to undergraduate students, they're very high in enjoyment on the basis of a high dose of pleasure.
Yeah.
They're sort of Epicurean in their outlook, and they're very low in meaning. They're not getting a whole lot of meaning. Or if they're real success junkies, they're trying to get as much satisfaction as they can, and it's elusive because they're on the treadmill. It's like work hard, get the hit. Okay, well, that was good for a week. The new car smell lasts for like a week, right? The people always say, it's the California phenomenon. There's a lot of research on this about how long you'll be satisfied if you move to California. And the answer is the sunshine will give you satisfaction for 6 months, but the taxes are forever. The best way for people to get happier immediately is to think in sort of 3 steps. The first is do the work. And to do the work, you need self-knowledge, you need understanding. And maybe that comes from your religious practice. Maybe that comes from, reading a happiness book about the science of happiness. Maybe that comes from sitting at your grandmother's knee and writing down everything she says for a week. Whatever it is, do the work. If you said, hey man, I wish I knew more calculus, I'd say buy a book.
Right.
I would say do the work. Don't wish you knew more math. Do the work. The second is to practice it in your life. People, if you can't just read a book about golf and become a better golfer, you actually have to golf. You have to learn, and then you have to golf. And happiness is a hands-on business by practicing the habits of happiness: faith, family, friends, and work, loving other people intensively, purposively. And then the last is really the most important, which is you got to share it. You have to teach others. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create a happiness movement of a nation of happiness professors. I want us to hold each other accountable for this. It's so valuable to me that you notice the irony of what I'm actually doing, which is not good for my happiness hygiene, and talking about happiness. That's what brothers are supposed to do for each other.
Right.
And when we hold each other accountable, we give each other suggestions. When we actually teach, this is the ultimate act of metacognition, where you're not being managed by anything. You're managing it by making it fully human, by observing it, by putting it into the prefrontal cortex of your big, wonderful human brain. 1, 2, 3, understand, practice, share. That's the secret. When you're looking in a mirror, there's kind of 2 people there. There's the observer and there's the observed. Understanding this is critically important to your happiness. It's not just a little fact that is kind of interesting. No. One of the biggest problems that we have is that we need both I-self and me-self. You need to observe the world so that you can survive and thrive, but you need the me-self so that you have an understanding of who you are and your place in society and in the world. You got to have a self-concept. Well, the big problem is not that we can break ourselves into I-self and me-self, that you're looking at your image in the mirror and you're being observed. The problem is that we overweight the me-self, that we're observed too much. There's too much consideration in our lives about people seeing us and what we think about other people think about us. You get my point, don't you? This is made all the worse with social media and all the modern communication techniques in which it's easy to look at your notifications. It's like a big mirror in front of you all the time. What do you need? What do I need? What do we all need? More I-self, more observation to take in the world without judgment. Now, what do I say? Do we need more of that? Well, to begin with, I'd be probably a better person if it weren't all me-self. But more to the point, for how to build a life, my column in the Atlantic, you'll be happier if you do. There's a lot of research that shows that when you're observing something at some remove, that your happiness rises and your anxiety falls. In contrast, when it's all me-self, when you're the one who's observed, your emotions yo-yo around all over the place, depending on whether or not you have a perception that the me-self is positive or the me-self is negative. You're being managed by the me-self. You manage the I-self. Do you want to be in control? Well, the question is, how are you going to do that? How are you going to be more observer and less observed? Well, there are a few ways to think about this. Number one, get mirrors out of your life. I mean, not completely. I'm not asking you to toss out all your mirrors, put them out by the curb on garbage day. You need something for me, well, I was going to say to shave in. Obviously, I'm not worried too much about that. But we want to actually be able to look in the mirror from time to time. The problem is, literally or metaphorically, there are too many mirrors in our lives. What I literally recommend is getting rid of all but maybe 2 or 3 mirrors in your whole house. Something else you can do is get rid of the metaphors for the mirrors, like on social media, turning off your notifications. Make it harder to see your reflection or your virtual reflection.
Because you made it this far in a video, I want to celebrate you. Most people start and don't finish. Most people never actually follow through. Most people say they want something, but they don't ever do the work to actually get it. But you are different. You are special. Believe Nation, you made it here all the way to the end, and I love you. So as a special celebration, if you put a hashtag believe down in the comments below on this video, I will showcase you and celebrate you somewhere on the screen in a future video because you are awesome. For 10 more amazing rules from Andrew Huberman, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
And I'm not trying to make light of these lists. These lists are important because they help us organize our information and differentiate between a fixed versus growth mindset. But they don't tell us why focusing on effort and engaging more effort would actually translate into higher performance.